Support for this podcast comes from the Central Valley Journalism Collaborative, connecting communities with the resources, infrastructure, and networks to ensure a vibrant local free press.
From KVPR in Fresno, this is Central Valley Daily. It's Thursday, October 9th. I'm Elizabeth Arkalian. A new children's book tells the story of how a boy from Mexico becomes a U.S. citizen.
I wanted to tell a story that was truthful, not only to my family, but to what is happening in the general population of immigrants.
Coming up, a conversation with the author about why this story is especially relevant right now. But first, these headlines. Former Fresno County Sheriff Margaret Mims is running for office. Mims announced her campaign for county supervisor to replace current supervisor Buddy Mendes. Mendes is choosing not to run for re-election and is endorsing Mims in her bid. Mims left her role as sheriff in January of 2023. As sheriff, she was a close ally of the Trump administration. She said she is returning to office because of her love for public service. The former Kern County supervisor accused of child cruelty will have a mental health diversion hearing. This, according to TV station KERO. Zach Scrivener is facing multiple felony charges, including 3 counts of child cruelty and 2 counts of illegally possessing an assault rifle. A mental health diversion can allow defendants to undergo court-ordered treatment instead of jail. Scrivener was reportedly found stabbed by one of his children last year after he allegedly sexually assaulted one of his other children. Governor Gavin Newsom has signed off on a new law that could help protect Social Security recipients from getting evicted if they can't pay rent because of disruptions in their benefits. The protections come at a time when the Social Security Administration has already been hobbled by staff cuts and could be facing even more. Ryan Sabalo with our California newsroom partner, Cal Matters, has more.
The new law requires courts to pause a pending eviction for up to 6 months if a renter can prove that they both use their benefits to pay rent and that their benefits have been disrupted through no fault of their own. The Department of Government Efficiency, also known as DOGE, cut more than 10% of the Social Security Administration staff earlier this year. That's triggered backlogs and customer service issues at Social Security offices around the country. And now President Trump is threatening to cut even more federal workers to pressure Congress to end the federal government shutdown. The law is in effect until January 20th, 2029, the day President Trump is set to leave office.
That was Ryan Sabalo with Cal Matters. Most of the California residents who've died this year of the mosquito-borne illness West Nile virus lived in the San Joaquin Valley. As KVPR's Carrie Klein reports, this region has some of the state's highest mosquito activity.
So far, 5 Californians have died of West Nile virus, including 3 in Tulare, Fresno, and Kings counties. Mary Beth Danforth of the California Department of Public Health says the valley is more prone to cases than the rest of the state.
Historically, West Nile virus activity is highest in the Central Valley in Southern California. And this year, the Southern San Joaquin Valley is just where we had our particularly high activity.
The weather here is warmer, and we have abundant birds that carry the virus. Danforth says most cases are mild, but around 1% will develop into seizures or paralysis, and a fraction of those are fatal.
There is no vaccine available for West Nile virus, and there's no targeted treatment, so we really look towards prevention.
Like using bug spray, wearing long pants and sleeves, and covering doors and windows with screens. For KVPR News, I'm Carrie Klein.
A Fresno couple is expanding the sport of pickleball in the region. The pair is partnering with a national pickleball franchise known as Dill Dinkers. As part of the deal, Bill and Georgia Revilla will establish 10 indoor pickleball clubs between Madera and Visalia. That's according to the Business Journal. Recently, the city of Fresno also opened new city-run pickleball courts, a sign of the sport's growing popularity.
Support for Central Valley Daily comes from Fresno Mazda, part of the Prieto Automotive family, leading the industry in the IIHS 2025 Top Safety Pick Awards, helping move Mazda closer to the goal of eliminating traffic fatalities. More information and the Mazda digital showroom available at myfresnomazda.com.
And now to our main story. This week, many Fresno Unified students were treated to a visit by a children's book author. Edward Dennis has a forthcoming book titled The Boy from Mexico Becomes a U.S. Citizen. It's the third in his series titled The Boy from Mexico, and it follows a character who finds his way after coming to the U.S. without documentation as a child. The story is personal and one that authors historically would have a hard time getting published. Not only is citizenship a big topic for children to digest, but it can evoke deep political viewpoints. Not exactly the type of story large publishing houses typically send to the press. But Edward is aiming to give his readers the words they need to talk about immigration from a human perspective. This comes at a time when the Trump administration's efforts to deport people in the country without legal status is sparking division among Americans. And it's an issue that has touched many families here in the San Joaquin Valley. Edward took a break from his local book tour this week to swing by the KVPR studios, and he starts our conversation by explaining the inspiration for his book series.
So this series is inspired by the life of my great-grandfather, Jorge Dennis Flores. He is an immigrant from Mexico. I changed the name to Luz Alvarez, which is my other great-grandfather, just to honor my mom. She recently passed away. So yeah, they're my inspiration for creating a story that I wish existed when I was a kid.
I was really impressed that you illustrated this book as well, which I feel like isn't super common for folks to write and illustrate. So I'd love for the listeners, if you could just describe your illustration style. The colors are really vibrant. What else would you say is unique about it?
Yeah, you're right. It's not very common. You know, I feel like my book, because I did write and illustrate it, it's very much like cohesive. It's my original thought, you know, when I thought of the words. And I would say the art is an extension of that. It's obviously grounded in reality. There's pages where he's working in the fields, but it's also very, you know, whimsical and colorful, and the colors, like you said, are very vibrant.
This series, The Boy from Mexico, starts with this little boy, Luz, crossing the border. The second book's about becoming a farm worker, and this third book's about becoming a citizen. It's a really timely time to be telling these stories. Was that intentional?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's a question no one's really asked me yet, because I'm, you know, talking to kids and stuff at school. But it wasn't intentional because I made this book 2 years ago. It's just coming out now because, truth be told, a publisher bought the rights to my book. Another one did, so it's getting switched over. It's supposed to come out like 9 months ago, but it's interesting the way the universe works, right? I'm not in control of all of that. It came out when it came out, and there's crazy things happening in the world. So now my book's kind of like at the forefront of that.
Yeah. And I saw on your Instagram, you said that this book is even a way for parents to talk with their children about the news these days and sort of help them digest what's happening. So how did you go about approaching such a big topic, but writing it in a way that was approachable for children to understand?
That's a really, really good question. That's the crux of the matter, right? Is like, how do you write these real situations, these real stories that are actually very scary, very devastating, very traumatic, especially whether it's the first book, second book, or this book. How do you write that for kids? And I'm banging my head against my tablet a lot of nights at my house, because you don't want to sugarcoat things. You don't want to take things out. It's tough. It's emotional, not only because it's my father's story, because you turn on the news and it's happening in front of our eyes. I wanted to tell a story that was truthful, not only to my family, but to what is happening in the general population of immigrants, whether they're from Mexico or Asia, wherever, right? And I guess I wanted to leave some of the hard parts out of there. There's a page that talks about him fearing being deported. And that's not easy to read to kids, because some of these kids are experiencing that. And, you know, I have to like hold my breath when I read a lot of those, because I'm grateful enough no one ever took my father away. And I don't know what a lot of these kids are going through. By the end of the week, I've read to thousands of children, so.
I think the illustration is probably really helpful, because I'm thinking of the page where there's the Social Security card that he gets, and that really demonstrates just how important that little piece of paper is, right?
Yeah, and it's funny, I have clips, even just an hour ago I was at one of the FUSD schools, and I was asking kids, raise your hand if you know what this is, and a few of them knew. One kid thought, oh, is that an ID when you're a security guard?
Oh.
Right, and then another kid was like, oh, that's a social security card, and they're like, why is he so worried about that? And I'm like, this is what people are, they are fighting for, is to get one of these to live the American dream that we're so grateful and blessed to be able to live in this amazing country. These people, they deserve the right to have one of these, and this character is going through that journey.
You also use a type of Spanglish in the book. You mix predominantly English sentences with some key Spanish words. What was your reasoning for that approach?
Yeah, in my family, we speak Spanglish a lot. So I had the option to do just straight English, or Foreign Rights Department was like, you can make it in straight Spanish, which they're actually going to release a Spanish version of this probably later next year or the year after that. But I wanted to do it Spanglish just because it's a story about my family, and that's what they speak.
Do you envision doing another follow-up book, or would it be part of this series or potentially a new series?
Yeah, so I actually have a lot of books I'm working on. I have an activity. It's like a bilingual, it's actually trilingual. So it's Spanish, English, and Nahua. Nahua is the primarily spoken indigenous language of Mexico. So that comes out in August of next year. It's a coloring/activity book tied to this. And then I have a graphic novel coming out in a year and a half. So 2027-ish. It's about being Mexican again. So yeah, it's this is my inspiration, is to share stories like this. There's only 7% of children's books and graphic novels are written for the Hispanic community.
Before I let you go, Edward, I'm curious about why you felt like this children's book series was the right approach to tell your family story.
Well, since kids don't listen to the radio, I don't think they're going to listen to this. This is me, mostly adults. Once upon a time, I guess I was like a keyboard warrior. I would get upset when, people would say things about immigrants, especially the Mexican community, that, it's weird being Mexican in the United States, especially when this land was owned by indigenous people and Mexicans. So you're looked like, as Oscar De La Hoya says, like a conquered savage a lot of times. And I feel like it's so hard to change an adult's mind that sometimes it's not even, and we're seeing that right now in current events, is like, why even talk to some of these people? But we need to talk to these people, right? It's not me that needs to do that. But my thing is like, what? I was a teacher, I'm an artist. Let me talk to the children. And if you read my books, they're not subjective at all. They're very objective, right? There's no, hey, believe this, do that. It's simply telling the story, book 1, 2, and 3, about my great-grandfather's life. And that's it. You take it, if you like it, or you want to throw it in the trash, you can do that. Hopefully you don't. But, if you love it and you want to share it with your children, that's amazing too.
That was Edward Dennis, author of the Boy from Mexico series. His forthcoming book, The Boy from Mexico Becomes a U.S. Citizen, will be published on Tuesday, October 14th. And Edward will be speaking at 3 bookstores in Fresno this Saturday, judging by the cover, Petunia's Place and Barnes & Noble. You can find details for those events online. And that is today's show. Today's episode was produced by Jonathan Linden and KVPR with support from the Central Valley Journalism Collaborative. I'm Elizabeth Arkalian. You can find the latest local news anytime at kvpr.org.
Sources and methods, the crown jewels of the intelligence community. Shorthand for how do we know what's real? Who told us? If you have those answers, you're on the inside, and NPR wants to bring you there. From the Pentagon to the State Department to spy agencies, listen to understand what's really happening and what it means for you. Sources and Methods, the new national security podcast from NPR.